Hello and welcome to another HanDrinksSolo wine info video. Today we're talking about the Elgin Ridge 282 Chardonnay 2019. Elgin Ridge was a biodynamically farmed estate in Elgin owned by Brian and Marion Smith. They were originally from the UK. They made plenty of cash in a delightful IT business and then sold it and bought a wine farm in Elgin, like you do. The winemaker was Kosie from Merwe, who now works partially in Germany and also making wines in Elgin, some really fascinating stuff. And the label to look out for is Nomad Wines. And you say, Han, why are you talking in the past tense? Well, the fact of the matter is that Elgin Ridge is no longer. It has been sold to Radforddale, who now have called the farm Radforddale Organics. So they won't be biodynamic as such, but they will still be farming it with organic practices. Now, as per usual, I'm going to chat a little bit about what's in the glass, and then after that, I'm going to talk about how Elgin manages to achieve those qualities. So you can watch it in whatever order you want simply by clicking about in the chapter markers in the timeline below this video. But before we sniff anything, I want to recap the differences between a shy nose and an open nose. And really it can be summed up in how far you are from the glass before you begin to smell the wine. So when you have to stick your nose right in the glass, then we're probably talking about a shy wine. If you can smell it with your nose just at the ridge of the glass, then it's moderate. If you're over here and you can already smell these aromas just rushing out of the glass to greet you, then you're probably dealing with an extroverted or open-nosed wine. So what do you smell in this? Are we talking Barbara Streisand or Monica Potter? For me, this is a fairly open wine. It's not exactly cleft palate open, but there's a fair amount going on that greets you before your nose is in the glass. And of course, you have these kind of salted almond elements, which are delightfully complex, and then you have limes and oranges, and then this lemon blossom floral note that floats over the top of it, and right on the end you've got a really interesting little oak-derived nutmeg nuance, which I think adds beautiful complexity. So there really is a lot going on the nose here. But let's see what it tastes like. So the question you want to be asking is, does the palate deliver what the nose has been promising? And for me, it really does. Up front, you've got this laser-like lime acidity, which then softens a little into riper citrus. And towards the end, you've got this pithy, almost white grapefruit structure on the tail, which is really quite powerful. And if you're experiencing this big structured finish, which is quite uncommon for a white wine, and you might be saying, surely, Han, this can't all just be oak structure, I'd say, yeah, right on, man. Kosie revealed that he, in fact, used 20% skin contact when fermenting the Chardonnay, which is not super common for a Chardonnay, but it certainly explains why it's got this big structured finish. But the most prominent element is definitely this crazy intense lime core. If you look at the technical analysis of this wine, it has 7 grams per liter total acidity, which is insane. But you also have ripe fruit. So the question to ask is, how does Elgin achieve this? Now, we all talk about Elgin Valley, but this can actually be misleading, because when we think about a valley, we think down. Even in Hollywood, Valley of Elah, 2 days in the valley, Death Valley, all major downers, right? And yet what people don't tell you is that Elgin is actually up, because in order to get to the Elgin Valley, you have to go up a fairly formidable escarpment. So this wine is named the 282 Chardonnay, and that's because it is grown at 282 meters above sea level. But what you need to know about Elgin is this is the valley floor. They have vineyards that go up to 900 meters above sea level, which makes them amongst the highest vineyards in the entire country. I mean, to give you some context, Helshoogte is about 450 meters. You've got Piognant in the Swartland, which is about 700 meters. And of course, you've got the Cederberg, which is 1,100 meters, which is in fact the highest vineyards in the country. But anything from 300 up to 900 is significant altitude. And you might say, Han, who cares? Why are you talking about altitude? And honestly, if you're really asking that question, I'm surprised you've made it this far in this video. But to answer your question, in other videos, I've pointed out how high altitude is often correlated with high diurnal range, which is often correlated with an increased level of complexity in a wine. I'll leave a link to another video at the end of this one so that you can get up to speed with the effects of high altitude and diurnal range on wine. But Elgin doesn't just have altitude. You need to remember that because it has altitude, this puts the vineyards right in the middle of a cloud belt. And then remember, Elgin is essentially like a giant potpourri dish on top of a pile of mashed potatoes made out of mountain. And so you have the clouds up at the top and they flow, and then because that bowl is surrounded by more mountain, the clouds settle in the valley, and what you have is a valley of clouds. And we know that clouds lower the temperature of the environment, and therefore allow for cooler temperatures in the vineyards for longer, which allow for more time for grapes to develop those delicious complex flavors before the acidity absolutely dies, which is what happens when grapes kind of reach full ripeness. And on that topic, if you're ever in a blind tasting and the first thing you notice on a wine is loads of acidity, you immediately want to start asking the question, could this be a cool climate wine? However, if all you taste is acidity and all the fruit is kind of green and awful, then that could just as easily be a wine from a warm climate that was just harvested too early. The combination of high acidity and well-developed fruit is probably the result of wines that ripened more slowly in a cooler climate. For me, this wine embodies all of that. I mean, it's that kind of amazing citrus acidity leaves your jowls tingling like a dead limb on a cross-country bus trip. And that's really what you want. So if you remember nothing else for today, remember that Elgin has some pretty comprehensive altitude and lovely clouds, which allows for this cool climate to ripen grapes slowly. If you have cracked this guy, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Leave a review on the website, or if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you can stay up to date with rising star winemakers, exciting new regions, or just unusual cultivars that are making names for themselves in the South African wine scene.